What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another podcast. This is the Doom of Fools. I have a special guest, one of the best PDH players on the planet. He gets to talk about Kinnan and Nadu today, the Simic King himself, WoundedSatellite. What's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, man? Doing well today.
Oh, man, I can't complain. It's a sunny day in Florida. It's hotter than my wife's tits.
It's pretty warm here in Colorado as well. Fortunately, got a nice day out with the dog. Took her to Cherry Creek State Park. Let her run around the river. She's feeling pretty good. She's sleeping right next to me.
Oh, Colorado, that's cool. My cousin's up in Colorado.
Yeah, it's been a good place. I moved here right about 8 months ago now, and I mean, I'm loving it. You know, moving back to the States after I was international for a few years. Always wanted to be in the mountains. I was originally from the East Coast, which, you know, the topography isn't as nice over there. So it's been cool to be in a place that has the outdoor activities I like to engage in.
Topography, dude. I'm a surveyor. I love that you said topography.
I mean, we got the tall mountains, man. We gotta go high up here.
You say international. Where are you from, dude? Like Canada or something?
No, I'm originally from Boston, but I mean, in the last 5 years of my life, I mean, I've lived in Argentina, I've lived in New Zealand, I've lived in Fiji, I've lived in Brazil, I've lived in Costa Rica. So I've been moving around a bit.
Dude, you're living the dream. That's awesome.
I've had some good times. Before my Magic the Gathering days and before COVID kind of threw a wrench in the plans, I did my training down in southern Argentina to get climbing and trekking guide certifications, and then moved over to New Zealand to work.
Wow. I'm just a dad of 5, just making babies and going to work every day. So I'm living through you, man. Good for you. I personally don't like heights, but I'm all for
it. You get used to them.
Yeah, okay. Sure. I just saw a thing where it was like, I took my wife on the sky high, like the dates or the restaurants, and the wife's like, can't move. They're 300 feet in the air. They had no chance.
I haven't seen those. That seems like a fun date.
No chance. So you're from Boston? What is in those hospitals?
Right.
Why is every good Magic player from Boston?
I mean, yeah, what is it? Me and Ian are like the Boston homeboys. We're just like born and raised in Boston and loved. Yeah.
There's like 10 players I know that are like, yeah, from Boston originally. And I'm like, what? You just took down this 80-person tournament. You didn't even break a sweat or take food. He's like, yeah, this is what I normally do. You should see my local meta in Boston. I'm like, what are y'all feeding you guys?
The Boston meta is really strong. Boston meta, I mean, you got Kaiser, you got Duncan, you got Eric DeVoe. There's a lot of Zach's over there. Snazerific was from there. There's a bunch of killers in Boston.
Boston, you got your khakis. How do you say that?
Khakis. So I've never had too much of a Boston accent, especially with all the travel. I definitely just have a generic voice at this point.
Right.
But my grandmother, rest in peace, lived there for 92 years, and you know, as a child, I remember always saying "Stay Star Market, say Star Market." She parked the car in Harvard Yard.
Oh, all right. No one's here to ramble about Boston. All right, WoundedSatellite. I want to go over a little bit of your profile. You know, your CDH beginnings. They go over Kinnan and Nadu. So we were just talking about it off air. You have a 92% conversion rate in 2024. Dude.
Been a good year.
Is this just easy for you? Are you just like, yeah, I'm definitely top 16ing today. Like, what's the mindset going into a tournament, especially at 92%? Is it just like, yeah, I'm the best Simic player in the world, I'm going to do this? Or is it more like, hey, I have my 5,000 hours in, this is nothing to me?
I mean, I definitely have a lot of personal confidence in my capability, but for me, I've gained consistency because I've learned a lot, and because I've played a lot, and because I've made a lot of mistakes. Something that's always been very beneficial for me and how I go about my life and kind of everything I've done is I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to make mistakes, and I'm really eager to learn. And my brain is very fortunate to be one that digests information very, very well and tends to be pretty good at utilizing the information that it learns. So I've always succeeded at strategy games pretty quickly. And so when I got into Magic, which I guess we're planning on getting into the story there, it was definitely a pretty quick turnout when I got into CDH, because I played my first tournament 1 week into playing the format, and it was a super fun time.
But yeah, like, did you play Magic for a long time? Like, I mean, like, Commander or anything? Or you're just like, no, Magic seems fun. Okay, CDH seems fun. Okay, now I'm one of the best players in the world. Was that just second nature to you? Was that instant? You said a week?
So CDH, when I really delved in, was pretty quick. My timeline with Magic Let me think how I should start this here. Yeah, fuck it. I don't think I've ever said this on air before. Fun factoid about my life. My parents gave me up when I was a kid. So I lived in group homes and stuff, and not something I want to delve into, but I'll reveal that little snippet of information about my
Uh-oh.
childhood.
Uh-oh.
My first ever interaction with Magic was in one of the group homes. There was a kid that just like had a couple of decks of cards, or like had a box of bulk commons that we could throw together a deck from. And that was really fun. I remember enjoying it a lot. And it was just like, we weren't even like using our forest right. I remember it was the old school art on a forest where it said like tap to like bring a forest or whatever.
Like
And so I,
Tempest.
I thought it meant, yeah, like I thought it meant like pull another forest card out of your deck when you tapped it. Like we weren't playing it correctly at all. But that was my first ever interaction with the cards. And then didn't see them again for years until I was in high school, where I went over to a friend's one time and they had a couple of decks. And I'll never forget. I don't remember the name of the cards, but it was the first time I ever saw a combo because my buddy's brother had like a dedicated deck where it had the two black enchantments where like when your opponent loses life, you gain life. When you gain life, opponent loses life, whatever those two are. So that was the first time I saw
Yeah.
a combo. Yeah, and I was like, that's
Sanquon Exquisite Blood or something like that.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
Sanguinebond Exquisite Blood. That was like my second time ever playing Magic, and I was like, this is fucked up. It's stupid. And then didn't touch it again for a long time until coming back again, like I think a couple visits in college, and then like right after college, I touched Commander. My buddies had the precons, and I really, really enjoyed Casual Commander. I thought it was a ton of fun. But that was right before I left for, living in Argentina and living in New Zealand. And I didn't really own any of my own cards at this point, except for one random booster box of Ixalan that I bought in college after kind of engaging with Magic, watching Saffron Olive on YouTube, where I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" And I just wanted to crack some packs, and I bought an Ixalan box one time. Still have those cards. Still have
Nice.
that Gizhoth. Yeah, yeah. Still have that Gizhoth leading my Dino Commander deck.
Hell
And
yeah. Everyone's got one of
yeah,
those.
then when COVID happened, and I was not forced, but left New Zealand and ended up back in my childhood bedroom in Boston with the parents that had previously given me up.
Mhm.
We were locked away and there was nothing to do. And I quickly discovered that someone had invented Spell Table. And the invention of Spell Table giving me this access to this game that I knew that I enjoyed, as well as giving me some amount of social interaction while I was locked away in my childhood bedroom during peak, shutdown COVID on the Eastern Coast, was really nice. And so I delved pretty hard into ultra casual commander, which like ended up going towards like more mid power commander, never really high power commander. And I enjoyed it a lot. And I got the comments from people several times that said, you really seem like you know what you're doing. You should try CDH. And my response every time was, no, I do this for fun. Like, I'm not interested in playing this game competitively. I just really enjoy like the casual commander game, blah, blah, blah. And that went on for a few years where, I played casual commander on Spell Table during COVID. And then, even while I was traveling, I brought some decks with me and I was able to go to game stores and just really, really enjoyed casual commander. And finally, I moved back to Costa Rica at the end of April in 2023. And right before that, I'd spent, some time in Brazil. And during my like last couple months in Brazil, I had printed out a CDH Kinnan deck. So it was just pieces of paper over basics, pretty much, where I was like, okay, let's give this potentially a try. And I got to play a few games of CDH while I was in Brazil, but never consistently. And then I moved to Costa Rica, and right when I got there, I had like 2 weeks where I had absolutely nothing to do and like no plans at all. I was just kind of staying there in an intermediary place, and I was not in the best mindset from some personal stuff that had been going on, so I wasn't really in the mood to go out. And I said, "Fuck it, let's try CDH." So right at like the last day of April, first day of May, whatever it was, I like actually hopped on Spell Table CDH on the Reddit Discord and just grinded like 10 hours a day for a week straight until the first Mox Masters that I played in, which was Mox Masters May, where I did decently in that one. And then 1 week later was the Chaos Treasure Series 3, where I played that one. And that was my first ever top four where I was against Jamaican Guy and Comedian and everybody in the finals.
Wow. So, so much to touch on. So, your first CDH games are on Spell Table? And like,
Well, technically, no, there was a couple in Brazil.
okay. Okay. All right.
So while I was in Brazil, I got to play in like I spent a month in Rio, and they had some people who played CDH there. And so yeah, my first ever like in-person real CDH games were with my like not even real Kinnan deck in Rio.
Okay, so Kinnan
And
was your
it's
first
really
deck.
cool.
Okay.
Kinnan was my first deck. Yeah. What actually got me to try CDH was a nice segue here from one of your previous episodes. I don't know if it's the one right before this or whatever, but with Tyler from Play to Win, when he did his deck tech on the Play to Win channel for Kinnan, it really hit home for me because when I was playing Casual Commander, which I right now 10 feet away from me in a drawer, I have like 30 something casual decks. And a lot of them I get bored of really quickly
Yep.
because they're doing the same thing every time and
Mm-hmm.
there's not too much thought process to it. And for me, that gets boring very quickly. I can only do the Is It Storm thing so many times. I can only do the Elf Ball
Right.
thing so many times.
Right.
And it gets kind of boring for me. The only deck that I never got bored of was my first ever commander deck, which is Muldrotha.
Oh,
And
the
what
Sultai,
I
right?
Yes, I'm a grindy Sultai stan at heart,
Me
which I've
too.
definitely carried through with CDH.
Devastasios is my all-time favorite deck.
It's a dude, it's fun. I'm not sure if it's the best for CDH colors, but it is really, really fun.
Right.
But
Right.
what kept it engaging for me was the diversity of play lines. Because my friends got annoyed at me immediately playing control and casual.
Oh,
And,
you're that
they were
guy.
like, I'm that guy. Yeah. And
Counter
so
spell? They're
what
like, get out of here! Don't counter my
No, 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 no,
commander.
no. I play no counters. I play no actual counters. So what my
Okay.
Muldrotha deck became, I'm a puzzle guy. I love letting my brain come up with the best possible solution to things.
Hmm.
And so Muldrotha, having access to the graveyard, having access to so much type of interaction, makes it very interesting the things you can do. And the way I designed the deck is it's all permanence Muldrotha minus like 2 cards, and it has very few instant speed capabilities. So I pretty much just let my opponents play out their turns and develop how they'd like. And then my job on my turn was to do my best to fuck up everything they'd accomplished. And what was really neat about that is it made every one of my turns its own puzzle of how to best fuck over their day.
Right. 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 You're like, I'm
And
not here for
and
winning. I'm here to do the thing. And if I did the thing, I
no, I
win.
still it's the deck wins. It 100% can win, but like it plays control and grinds it out for a while first.
Mhm.
And the fact that the games weren't the same every time because I had to be thinking of these like complex lines of how to best hinder my opponents, and I had to do like actual threat assessment of what pieces on their board were the best to deal with.
Mhm.
Like even starting that in casual, it was really fun because it kept the games diverse. And
Right.
so when
Yep.
Tyler did his deck tech for Kinnan, he talked about how Kinnan, with its diversity of play lines, was a deck he never got bored of. And that was the sentence that really clicked it for me when he said that. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to try a CDH deck, because my opinion from the casual perspective of CDH is the decks are just ultra fast, doing the same thing, whatever. When I heard him talk about Kinnan and the way he spoke about Kinnan, it really hit home. And I said, fuck it, I'm going to try this. And I already had some of the cards for it, where it was like, I already had a Nyx Bloom Ancient. I was like, fuck yeah, I get to play this finally. The coolest thing actually is so I have my altered Kinnan that a lot of people know, which is the Ukiora one that Modfly did for me. But
Mhm.
on the back of that is an extended art foil Kinnan that I did not buy. I had. It was the first ever collector booster I opened in my life. Was a random pack of Ikoria that I just bought a collector booster for the fuck of doing it, and it had that extended art foil Kinnan in it, and it's had my binder for years. Where I had no idea it was an expensive card, and I never played it anywhere. And then when I decided to book Kinnan, I remembered that was in my binder, so I've had that the whole time.
Wow. That's like an $80 card.
It's fluctuated, but yeah, it's
That's
an
funny.
expensive one that I just like randomly had and conveniently turned out to be, my baby of a deck that I love so much.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
yeah, that was my entry. And the cool thing I do just like to mention is a lot of the cards in my Kinnan deck have a story to them. And one of my favorite stories is my two elves, my Llanowar elves and my Elvish Mystic. From my few games I got to play when I was in Rio and Brazil, I made friends with this play group. And on my last day playing with them, where I talked about how much I love foils and all this kind of stuff, one of the guys gave me his two Portuguese foil elves out of his Malcolm Tana deck for me to have in Kinnan and remember them forever. So those will
Oh
those will
wow,
never leave the deck.
dude, that's sick. That's what I love about Kennen is those elves that are 10 cents that've been in Magic for 30 years. Yeah, they're cracked in this deck.
They're really good.
That's awesome. So pretty much what you're saying is when I talk to Tyler next week, blame him for you shitting on this format with this deck. Okay, got it.
Tyler knows. I've talked to me and Tyler. Me
92%
and Tyler know
conversion
each
rate.
other.
92%. dude. So going into Kinnan, is that we'll get to Nadu later, but Kinnan and Nadu, is Kinnan pretty much like once you started playing this format and once you started winning a lot, is that pretty much the only deck you played for a while? I know you got on Talion recently and Nadu recently, but going into CDH, was it just Kinnan all day, every day?
Yeah, I grinded the fuck out of Kinnan. I've probably got almost 2,000 games on Kinnan at this point. Where for all of 2023, every single tournament I played in 2023 was on Kinnan, 100% of them. My first ever, excluding actually one like random 15% locals that we were fucking around and I borrowed my buddy's Yiddish deck, but that I don't count that. That wasn't like a real event. But every event that mattered in any capacity was Kinnan. And my first ever real event not on Kinnan was January Mox Masters of 2024, where I brought up Nixilis. And I top forward that one. And then people said that was bullshit and I got lucky. And so I brought it back 1 week later for Chaos again and top forward again. And then after that, I think I played one more event on Kinnan because I think that was the Boil. And then after the Boil, I played the next Mox Masters on Rogsai. I'd had like 20 games on Rogsai. I pretty much blind sent it, but I was just like, let's fuck around for a little bit. And then after that was Chaos Treasure Series 11, where I played Talion for the first time. And that was my first ever like 100+ person event win. And then the week after that was Lotus Series, where I actually true blind sent Blue Farm. I didn't know what to play the night before, so I was talking to Waffle at like almost midnight the night before, and he said, fuck it, just play my Blue Farm deck. So I played Waffle's list, and yeah, my first ever game on Blue Farm was round 1 of that event. Probably never touching that deck again. But
did you in the event?
Oh, I top 16. Yeah, no, so I'm yet to ever miss a top cut when I've played a different deck. So I top 16 on Blue Farm, I top 16 on Rogsai, I won on Talion, I had 2 top 4s on Ob, and then since then I've played one more event on Ob and one more on Talion. I've top 16 but not top 4 at both of those. And then up until then it was mostly a grind on Kinnan again, and then recently I've been I've been playing Nadu.
Yeah, 92% conversion rate, 30%, 54% win rate. Just in 2024, I think you're pretty good. I'm just a hunch.
I appreciate it.
All right, so let's get into Kinnan. Like I said, my next episode is going to be all about Kinnan, but I got it. You're probably top 3 Kinnan player. You have to sell me on Perplexing Chimera. I had a Kinnan list. I did not play this fuck shit of a card, but this card is actually insane. But you have to sell me and my friends on it, because I have a couple friends that love Kinnan.
Right. So Perplexing Chimera is a very unique stacks effect. Where I will throw out the shout out here that there's I have a primer for Kinnan that has one main chapter with 9 sub chapters all about Perplexing Chimera.
Yeah, okay, I'll link it down below.
Yeah. The Kinnan primer it's 100 pages on the Google Save Doc. It's a long one. But yeah,
Chimera. Okay, all right, I see. Yeah,
I'll essentially just kind of work through what I'm looking on the primer here, just to help me keep my thoughts in order. One of the great things about Chimera is the upside of it. I generally don't play cards for the upside, but Chimera just has a really nice one, which is the soft lock, which is where you can assemble Perplexing Chimera, Seaborn Muse, and Homeward Path, which is essentially, it's so hard for your opponents to beat that. It's not like a true lock that says you've won the game, but I've had a lot of tournament games scooped because I assemble it. It pretty much just says your opponents can't cast anything that matters. They can cast creatures that matter sometimes, but that's about it.
Silence, I guess, right? At that point, it's like Seaborn Muse. I win with Seaborn Muse, and I have this silence.
Yes, if you assemble that lock, it's not a silence, but yeah, it really restricts your opponent's capability of casting spells. They can still do things, but they can't really cast spells that have any level of importance. Because even if they just cast a mana rock, like, okay, I'll take it. and then I'll take back Chimera, and then we'll untap both again. It essentially gives you like 2 counter spells every turn, which is really nice.
All right, I think you're selling me. I think you got it.
Yeah, and then, well, no, I mean that shouldn't be the selling point, right? Because you shouldn't be playing a card because of its upside when you assemble these 2 other pieces with it. Like that's not the reason to play the card. That's just an upside of the card. The reasons you should play the card are because Chimera is an uncounterable counterspell that works through Grand Abolisher, works through everything else, and is so difficult for your opponents to play around because they're legitimately unable to cast their win conditions, right? Like you can't cast your Ad Nauseam, you can't cast your Unroll Breach because it's just gone. Like you don't have access to it again. And what's so unique about Chimera as a stacks piece is it's a stacks piece that you have agency over. and your opponents can't properly play around. Where I think some of the examples I give in the primer are something like, Arcane Laboratory or Rule of Law effects in general.
Mhm.
Your opponents can play around those with the understanding of how they function. Very similar to back when I used to play Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant. That says, first artifact instant sorcery, your opponent's turn will be countered. They
Mhm.
can play around that. They can just play Rite of Flame that gets countered or whatever. Perplexing Chimera is unique that it doesn't give your opponents any real rule set to play around. They don't get to decide when it's used. You have agency over when it's used. And so if you're a player that knows how to use Perplexing Chimera,
Mhm.
and your opponents can't properly play around it's really, really difficult for them to win games through it. It's also just incredible for getting draws if you want the game to go to a draw.
Mhm.
um,
Okay.
what's also really nice about it is that it does let you steal multiple spells on the stack. So like I had a situation where I cast an overloaded Cyclonic Rift with a Trinisphere out, right? And so a guy was like, okay, with that on the stack, I'm gonna abrupt decay the Trinisphere. And I said, cool, perplexing Chimera trigger. And then another opponent jumped priority and said, okay, I'm gonna flash in this Solitude. Um, and I said, cool, perplexing Chimera trigger. And those are two spells cast by two different opponents, and they both have Chimera triggers on top of them. And because I controlled Chimera when both of those spells were cast, both of those Chimera triggers are mine. And what's really nice is I do not have to control the Chimera for my Chimera trigger. As long as an exchange can be made, I can still say yes to that exchange. And if the spell is a targeting spell, I choose the targets regardless of whose spell it becomes.
Mhm.
So in that situation, I said yes to the Chimera trigger on Solitude, took the Solitude, gave the Chimera to, we'll say, player D, and then the next trigger on the stack was player C's Abrupt Decay. So then I said yes to that exchange as well, made it player D's Abrupt Decay, and player C gets the Chimera, but I still got to choose the targets for the Abrupt Decay. And then after that, the Psych Rift bounced my own Chimera back to my hand, and then I replayed it.
But once they resolved, I didn't see someone Swan Song Chimera before, and that blew my mind. Once they
It's an
resolve,
enchantment.
it's over. Okay.
Yeah, it's really difficult to get off the
I
field.
really think the power of it too is what you just explained. I've been playing CDH for 3 years. I had no idea you could do that. It's confusing. So I think that's part of it is, okay, what if I interact here, interact there? And you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this, do that, do this. Oh, I get my Chimera back. And I'm like, what? I think that's half the reason why it's good. It's so confusing.
Yeah, I mean that's skill issue, right? Like let people punt into it. It is probably the card I play that gets the most just like generic punts in my favor, which I appreciate. Like my favorites, I actually have a list of them. The last chapter in the primer about Chimera is called Punts Punts Punts, where like someone casts a Gilded Drake to try and take my Chimera, and I just say yes to the Gilded Drake, and I take it and then take back Chimera, something like that.
Jeez. Perplexing Chimera. Yeah, me and my buddy Eric were building it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if you need this, and he was like, I don't know, maybe, but like, what you're saying, it's probably simple.
I think it's incredible. Yeah, I think the card's really, really good at Kinnan because Kinnan's so unique in its ability to play these types of creatures, and especially to just like spin into them as free value. It's super important. It also is. It has so many niche uses. We could talk about just Chimera for an hour with like how many niche things it does, which we probably shouldn't spend all the time on. But the card's busted.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna deep dive into that next week. The only other card I really want to give to you because not a lot of pilots are on it. I know you're heavy on it. It's Trinisphere.
Amazing. It's
Is it
I think the
amazing?
best.
I just feel like
It is
Hullbreaker and Tidespout are your best combos. So you just
right.
tell me on that.
You can still win with Trinisphere out with Hullbreaker and Tidespout. That's fine.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess like a mana vault and then it pays for itself or
Yeah,
Grim
so
Monolith.
you need one of either Mana Vault and Grim Monolith. Those are required. You need one of those because with Kinnan they tap for 4. And then you need one of your other pieces in the combo to be either the other one of Grim Monolith and Mana Vault or Soul Ring or Mana Crypt. Because the collective cost of those pieces will be 6, and the collective result will be 7 or 8 mana. So that lets you go infinite colorless, which then, as long as you have any other mana rock on the battlefield, you can then filter into colored mana. So you can still win with Trinisphere out with Hullbreaker and Tidespout just fine. It definitely obviously makes it a little bit harder, but that's okay. Trinisphere of any card I have ever added to Kinnan has the highest win rate of any card I've ever resolved. Where I think I've resolved a Trinisphere since adding it, I'd guess around 60 times. I have lost exactly one game.
Oh, I hate that. Oh
The
man.
only game I lost was because all three of my opponents in successive order cast Dockside.
All right. what you what you do to that? All right, I'm just gonna flip the table.
Yeah, I said you got it, bro. Like, that's fine. Three
All right.
Docksides in a row. I played Trinisphere on turn 2, and there was a bunch of mana rocks on board already. And yeah, I was player 2, player 3 cast Dockside, player 4 hit me with Ragavan, got my finale devastation and got Dockside, and then player 1 cast Dockside and won.
Yeah, Dark Side's broken. I think.
Dockside's good.
Yeah. So it's so good, and I appreciate grinders like you not being on Blue Farm and taking a deck and keep playing it. And hey, even though right now, that's what I'm going to pivot into is it's probably one of the most popular decks still, but it is down in the stats wise. And I really think because a lot of the better players like you are playing Nadu. And I think not the worst players, but the newer players on Kinnan, like I feel like Kinnan has a really, really high ceiling, probably a lower floor. So what do you think maybe is that why the stats are low on it? Because I know you said off air, you, Ian, and a couple other guys, y'all are still wrecking with it. So why do you think it's getting lower and lower and lower as we talk and play PvH right now?
So I've preached forever that I think Kinnan is an incredibly hard deck to play properly. It is exactly as you said. It has a monstrously high ceiling and a dirt low floor. And that's why I always got generically a little tilted when people are like, "Oh, Kinnan's so easy to play. Like, just make your 7 mana and spin, blah blah blah." That's the worst way to play Kinnan. And the people who play
100%.
Kinnan that way are the people who don't know how to play Kinnan and just get mad when they lose with the deck and they're just like, "Oh, I'm spinning into a Thorn Mammoth and this sucks." Like that's not the way to play Kinnan. Kinnan is incredibly unique in that I truly believe it is the most flexible deck in the format.
Okay.
Where there's a lot of decks that can encompass
Farm?
multiple archetypes. So no, I mean Blue Farm is pretty flexible, right? Blue Farm is
Mm.
secretly a control deck. It has an incredibly deep interaction package, and then it gets to pivot into really quick proactivity. And that's why actually I compare Blue Farm and Nadu really, really similarly at this point, because Nadu can do the same thing. It can sit back and play control, and then has like a really quick pivot to proactive lines, and that's where like Talion didn't fit as well. Is it plays control better than Blue Farm, but it doesn't have the proactive pivot to like win whenever it needs to, or whenever the window is most optimized for it. So Blue Farm is very flexible in that it can play control and it can be turbo, control turbo mid range, but it can't really stacks anyone out in a serious way. There are some decks that still are very, very flexible. Kinnan is a deck that can go turbo, can go mid range, can go control, can go stacks. Like it does everything with a level of confidence. And so the problem is, I think I don't know the best way to put it, less experienced Kinnan players who are really locked into that, like, I'm going to make my mana and spin game plan and aren't having success with the deck. They don't know how to pilot the flexibility of Kinnan. And when you look at players like myself, Ian, Tyler, like guys who have just so many reps on the deck, we are really, really good at adjusting our play patterns to the pod and utilizing the flexibility of Kinnan. And that's why you see us having such better success with it. Because Kinnan, when utilized in that flexible, pivotable format with confidence, is really, really, really good.
Yeah.
It's just hard to learn the deck to that mastery level, and then also because it is a deck that's primary focus is on that grinding value and control. That's its happy place. That's where it's most comfortable. You do need to also have really dedicated knowledge to the rest of the format, because knowing what you're playing against lets you play control so much better.
The mulligans, right? Mulligans are everything. I tell people in tournament and
It's not just
CDH
mulligans, but yeah.
When I say mulligans, I mean turn order, who's playing what guy is this, Roxai. I'm not really that good against Roxai, so now I know what's a mulligan, and then we haven't even, barely sat down yet, and you already know what to keep, and you haven't looked at any of your cards. I think that is a lot of it, especially with Kinnan. I don't think you have any bad matchups. Maybe Roxai?
Yeah, so
Maybe?
Rogsai's fine, actually, because we have so many pieces for Rogsai. Like, we have our full counterspell package, which isn't as deep in terms of pure stack interaction. Like, we're only, compared to, like, Nadu, I'm on, like, almost 17 counterspells. Kinnan, I have, I think, 11. I think Sink into Stupor, if you count it, got it up to 12. But the difference is, like, people think Kinnan is interaction light, but when you look at its creature base, it's not. Like, Armored Scrapgorger's interaction, Clones can be interaction, Gilded Drake, Spellskite,
Right,
Endurance,
right.
Manglehorn, Sky Turtle, Wandering Kick, Perplexing Chimera, Glenelendra, Hullbreaker, Horn Mammoth, Tidespout, Void Winnower, like all of those things still fit within the realm of interaction.
Right. You
And
have
so
12
Kinnan,
with Mindbreak Trap.
yeah, 12 with Mindbreak Trap or with Sink into Stupor is the one that's like, it's a
Okay.
land
Yeah.
sometimes. But so that's where when you look at a Rogsai matchup, like we do have a good solid counterspell package. We still have 12 pieces of counter magic, but then Armored Scrapgorger is good against them. Endurance is really good against them. Manglehorn's really good against them. Wanderer Kick, Chimera, Glenelendra are all really good against them. So keeping a hand that's able to get down. Oh, and also of course Trinisphere, right? Like Trinisphere is our best card against them.
Yeah, yeah. I guess a turn on Trinisphere, they scoop.
Well, not even turn one, right? But like it can be the mid game. We can be the mid game on Trinisphere, and cool. Roxai has 6 mana. Okay, I'm gonna play out this Trinisphere. Your only viable combo at this point is exactly Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation, or Tainted Pact, and you can't even protect it.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So Trinisphere, yeah,
with
completely
the
stops
scar.
that trap.
Yeah.
Yeah, who cares? If you get down a Trinisphere, they are so dead in the water. They need exactly 6 mana. They need Thassa's Oracle with exactly Demonic Consultation or Tainted Pact, and they need no one to have any piece of interaction to stop any of that. That is their only viable win line. I have won one game through a Trinisphere when I was on Rogsai, which was very funny for me, and it was because I was able to Jeska's Will for like 15 mana into a Mnemonic Betrayal, into someone's Kinnan, into my Dockside. Like it was I made like 50. So like it was a very unique. Yeah, it was a unique, specific situation.
Okay. I'm glad we're talking about Rockside because Rockside is probably the best it's ever been in the meta right now. So pretty much what you're saying is it's just the people playing Nadu and other decks, and a lot of the higher guys are playing Blue Farm. And right now with the Invitational in this kind of season, people are off of Kinnan. But you're saying if you and Ian brought this to the biggest tournament tomorrow, you're very confident, and I totally agree with you. Kinnan is still top 2, top 3 decks for sure. That's kind of lie on this one.
I don't think I'd put it top 3 right now.
Really?
I think it definitely is in a worse place in the meta generically. Yeah, because so like I feel confident in the Rogsai matchup because I think I know what I'm doing with Kinnan, but in terms of how the meta is functioning overall, I would put Kinnan maybe in the 5-6 range right now. Like I still think Rogsai is better than Kinnan at this exact moment because so many people are focused on proactivity. Kinnan's really good at like, if it's just a mid-range matchup that happens to have a Rogsai, Kinnan's in great shape. But the fact that we're often going against like double Rogsai Sisay matchups or something like that, that's a really hard Kinnan matchup.
But I think Kinnan's better than Sisay. Like Kinnan is the activate my commander win the game thing.
Well, Sisay's is different, right? Sisay's is much more deterministic. Yeah, I mean Sisay I think gets away with a lot. Sisay gets away with a lot. Yeah, I think Kinnan gets away with less. I think people just need to learn to say better. I think people have just like a very generic fear of Kinnan where they sometimes preemptively interact when they don't need to, which, if that's happening in the meta, it hurts it. Versus Sisay is really good at sometimes being covert. Like Sisay's only dedicated very telegraphed lines or where you just have out the Bloom Tender, Faber, Roro, Savala for a turn with like the obvious mana up, right? That's where everyone's looking at their board and they're like, we have the turn clock here, find something to deal with this. But in other situations, it's not so telegraphed. Kinnan is generically less telegraphed, and so people just have a higher inherent fear of it and will preemptively interact with you often more than they should.
Well, also, too, Kinnan went from maybe a top 10 deck to it's probably the second best deck to Blue Farm for a long time. Probably 6 months ago was the second best deck, and then something happened. Nadu got printed, and it's Sisay. So I think that's just a recency bias. But you can't tell me as one of the best. You can't tell me as one of the best Kinnan pilots right now. You don't fare good in the meta, and I think that's where stats do lie. I'd put my money on you with Kinnan than I would with a random pilot with Sisay or Rockside.
Sure. I mean, yeah. If you're gonna like, I would feel totally confident playing Kinnan tomorrow. Like overall generic.
Anytime Dick and Harry can't take a Kinnan, it's probably fifth.
Right. I mean, it's the same way that we can look back to the really heavy Blue Farm meta of a few months ago when Blue Farm was like truly just an insane percentage of the meta. It still is, but like it was even worse. 5-6 months ago, and
Mhm.
Cedh was doing well, and that makes generic sense, not because of the skill pilots or whatever, but when you look at decks like Cedh and Magda that were doing really well, they were decks that win without casting spells. And when the meta is so dedicated to the Rhystic Study plan and
Oh.
drawing off of your opponent's casting spells and trusting that value, it makes sense that those were decks that were doing well within that meta. Like there is a level of
Mhm.
meta analysis you can do that just makes logical sense in hindsight of like, okay,
Mhm.
these are good right now. And I
Yep.
think when you
Yep.
look at the current meta, that is everyone's really afraid of Rogzai, so people are often keeping more interactive hands, paired with everyone's really afraid of both Cedh and Nadu, so people are often just
Mhm.
a little bit more up on on-board interaction than usual.
Yep.
It's harder for Kinnan right now. So I do think Kinnan's in a
100%.
worse place than it was, but it's still a deck I would feel incredibly confident on, yeah.
Yep. Yep. All right. So let's get into it then. I mean, this stupid bird. And I say stupid. I know the power of it. I know it's insane, and I know you're one of the best players. Respectfully, I hate this bird. I hate that it has the Karkashima effect, or it has the I'm going to sit here, do my thing, counter everything, and then just win out of nowhere. But I do agree with you what we said off air. I think it's healthy for the meta. I think another good deck is really good. The adversity of this format. That's why it's the best format to me to play. And in general, like I played a Pioneer tournament and I was bored out of my mind. I'm like, okay, 1v1, I'm bored. You're Zorius, you're blowing up my elves, you're doing this, okay, woo. With this meta, no one can be like, I'm winning every single CDH game. It doesn't matter, yada, yada, yada. I feel like Nadu brings another, hey, I'm a threat. So let's talk about Nadu. Why didn't Wizards playtest this? And where do you think even it has the I'm just rambling, but it has the best start ever. And if you look at the last 2-3 months, it's right there with Blue Farm. Do you think Nadu is going to stay the same the next 6 months, a year? Is this something that I put Red Blast on my Grixis deck just for Nadu? Is this something that's here to stay longevity wise? Like, where do you think Nadu is in the meta currently and in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's here to stay for sure. I think it's proven itself time and time again, and it's proven itself. So what's really interesting, we talked about how Kinnan has like the lowest floor ever
Mm-hmm.
and a really high ceiling. Nadu has a very stable floor. Like not Nadu is one of those decks that you can be not very experienced in CDH and you can pick up and you can win games.
Okay.
And that's something that's going to really push a deck to look incredible statistically when it's not just experienced players winning with the deck, but also newer players doing well with the deck.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you notice a deck is like very, very powerful, and I think that that's a cementing factor in saying it's here to stay. And that's really the same thing that Blue Farm went through, right? When Blue Farm and Kinnan were in their peak explosion phase at the beginning of 2024, Kinnan's stats started to go into the dirt because all these people were picking up Kinnan, they didn't know how to play with it, and Blue Farm's win rates stayed very stable and even went up. And I think that's very telling of like how good a deck is and how easy it is to play as well. But Nadu, even though it has this really high floor, also has this really nice, masterful ceiling that has been really awesome to learn and develop with. And the deck can be built in different ways, which I
Right.
kind of like about it. Where
Okay.
a lot of times when you're looking at a Blue Farm deck, for instance, like the only questions you have for yourself are like, are they slightly more proactive with necropotence maybe, or but most Blue Farm decks are 95 cards the same, or like a swap of a talisman and a Mox Amber. It's
Mm-hmm.
very very similar overall.
Mm-hmm.
Nadu decks are actually built pretty diversely here, where you have like the quote unquote turbo Nadus that are like full landfall storm. You have some with the like Nissa Ashaya packages that take away the elves, and then you have some like mine that are much more like grindy mid range control, using Nadu as a card advantage engine and then winning late.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. That's what I kind of like is we're still figuring out the lands. Is it 36? Is it 40? Is it 32? Like it has a lot for me. It has a lot of improvement. But mainly, I want to talk about biggest comparisons. I don't even compare it to Kinnan. I don't know what anybody's talking about. I don't think it's close to Kinnan, but I'm not a Kinnan pilot. I really think it has that Karkashima effect. I don't think you've been playing 2 years ago, but when I first got into CDH, Karkashima was the boogeyman. Still, people, okay, Takashima on the stack, I'm going to remove Kark, and then it kind of fizzled, but now it's coming back. I think it's that aspect. Even it doesn't matter to me how you build it. It has that. Okay, I'm either gonna jam this Nadu and win, or I don't win, or I'm going to counter, wait, cast a Shuka. Okay, next turn on tap, and I'm definitely winning for sure. But I was in a tournament I think a month ago, and I was helping the guy. I'm like, hey man, you have a trigger here, you have a trigger there, you have a trigger here. Like, I'm trying to help him, but he had no idea what he's doing. But he didn't really need to because Nadu is that strong. It's that hey, you have this, you make creature, okay, you win the game. So, are you on Nadu right now, or are you like mainly just Kinnan? I know you won won a tournament 3 weeks ago, I believe. How do you feel with the bird? Do you like it more than Kinnan in the meta right now?
Right now, I think it's better than Kinnan. Yeah, which I will say I definitely empathize with the frustration of, I feel very comfortable with Nadu right now to the extent that like I can play out my win lines really, really quickly. So my like quote unquote win storm terms aren't like too draining and oppressive, and I'm not taking up 45 minutes of your time. It's like 5 to 10 minutes at most. But I definitely can understand people getting frustrated with the play patterns of someone who like doesn't do it efficiently and like does all their triggers really, really slowly and all that kind of stuff. I know there's a funny picture of me online that Zane posted from Fishbowl where the guy next to me was reading a book. What happened in that game, just to be incredibly clear, is I obviously had deterministic win, and the guy next to me says play it out, and then pulls out a book.
And you go,
so like there was
awesome, I'll play it out.
and I said, "Sounds good, bro. I'll play it out." So I played it out, and the way it worked out was like I had it to where I could easily get through my entire deck with tokens. There was no way to fizzle, but all the cards that I was looking for to like show them the cards that say "Are we good now?" all happened to be in like the bottom 10 cards of my deck.
Right, so it's deterministically, but it's not deterministically. But you
No, it was deterministic that I could draw through my deck. Like there was no question that I could get through it. I just physically had to go through getting all the cards. And so he told me to play it out for the LOLs and pulled out a book, which led to a very funny picture.
I wasn't going to mention the picture. So in your list, what are the win cons? I don't see Ashaya, I don't see Ballista, Thorkel. There's just some convoluted, crazy win line that only good Magic players like
I mean, I've talked about them with a lot of people, but yeah, the only ways I have to win the game on Nadu are Finale Devastation and Cephala Coliseum loops.
Oh yeah, is that the Eternal Witness thing with the Guy's Cradle?
Well, that's like a way to make infinite mana. That's not really what I'm attempting to do here. There's multiple different ways to loop Cephala Coliseum. But essentially the easiest ways are it's one of those combos that you can assemble once you like have access to your deck type thing. It's not like it's a lot of pieces. Like you need to have Endurance and Displacer Kitten and Nadu and Sylvan Safekeeper and all these things on board. But it's like once you have access to your deck, you just have access to those cards, so it's not an issue.
Okay, and you've probably done it 100 times, so it's nothing to you. This podcast is mainly getting people into TDH and talking to the big titans like you to try to help them understand, like how do you actually win with that loop?
The way the combo works here is so first thing, Cephala Coliseum is a land that says you can tap it and pay 1 blue mana. I believe it's 1 blue mana, right? That's what it costs. 1 blue mana. You have to have Threshold, so you have to have at least 7 cards in your graveyard. Not a problem. Target player draws 3 cards and discards 3 cards. So this functions as a way to mill out your opponents. So the required pieces for this are Sylvan Safekeeper, which lets you sacrifice your lands and targets things when you sacrifice your lands. It requires Displacer Kitten. It requires Endurance. It requires Nadu. And it requires any token creator. So that can be Field of the Dead, Springheart, Nantuko, Scute Swarm. It doesn't matter which one. You just need to have something that gives you token creation for landfall. Because Sylvan Safekeeper, when you sack your lands, it gives things Shroud. So you can't continuously target the same things over again. Also, Nadu triggers are limited. So the way the combo works is imagine you have all your lands on the battlefield. I can tap all of those lands for mana and then sacrifice all of those lands to Sylvan Safekeeper to target a bunch of tokens. That's going to put Nadu triggers on the stack equal to the number of lands I control. Then what's required for this combo is any 3 non-creature spells. They literally don't matter what they are. You can just be like a Veil of Summer and an Noxious Survival and a March of Swirling Mist, just like anything you can cast, right? Because then with those Nadu triggers on the stack, you cast any non-creature spell, Displacer Kitten trigger, you flicker your Endurance, which shuffles in all of the lands back into your library. Then you let the Nadu triggers resolve, which puts all of those lands back on the battlefield. And when you put all of those lands back on the battlefield, because you have token creation, you're going to make at least the number of tokens equal to the number of lands you can trigger, which means you never run out of tokens for Sylvan Safekeeper. And once again, you tap all your lands for mana, and then you do that again. The extra Nadu trigger to get back the non-creature spell you cast happens when you flicker Endurance with Displacer Kitten, so this will never fizzle. And this will produce you infinite mana and infinite tokens. And from there, you can do just Finale Devastation to kill people, or what you can start doing is, while you're doing this sacrifice land loop, you can start also filtering in Cephala Coliseum activations, because it's putting Cephala Coliseum directly back into play for you, so you just mill out your opponents. And the way I would recommend doing this, if it's on your turn and you are able to, I will normally make sure I have a Dosin, a Sylvan Safekeeper, and a Spellskite, so there is just absolutely no way for my opponents to cast spells. But you also can do this combo with the Cephalocalcium cracks entirely at instant speed. It does let you do an entirely instant speed combo as long as you have the pieces on board already. As long as your Displacer Kit Endurance is on board and your token creator is on board, then every single other part of the combo is instant speed. You can do it on top of someone else, etc. And you are able to stack the Cephalocalcium cracks, where you can do them at the start of every combo. So you can stack the Cephalocalcium activations so that they never start resolving until you have a million pointed at each player. So there's nothing they can do to not die.
That's what my question was. Do you have to hold priority in any of this? But you're saying it doesn't matter if they respond. You just, in response, I'll do it again and again and again. Okay, in response, I'll do it again and again.
Well, so yeah, you hold priority on every Cephalocalcium activation. So like, let's say that you have a million pointed at player B, a million pointed at player C, and a million pointed at player D in that order, right? And so you start letting them resolve. And let's say that they have the ability to cast spells and they have mana available on board. And so they wanted to try and do something. You can sit back, and if they go, okay, I'm going to cast this Born Upon Wind to try and, win the game here, you can say, cool, on top of your Born Upon Wind, I'm going to do this exact same loop again and put another million Cephalocalcium activations on top of you.
Okay. I got you. Okay.
And that kills them. So that works. And I also, what do you mean by protection?
Like One Ring. That's a popular card right now.
How do I win through the One Ring?
Yeah, because it's just target, right? Finale and that.
Yeah, I can't.
Target player.
Right. So I know a lot of people care about One Ring protection. So I've played in a very high number of tournaments at this point. Would you like to guess the exact number of games of my 200 something tournament games that I have not been able to win because I was at time in a tournament and my opponent had One Ring protection?
0.
I can tell you the exact number. 0 is correct. So in my brain, I'm like,
player, okay, I'm not like you. I don't know. I just think,
no, you're good. It's just in my brain, I'm like, who cares, right? It's one of those things where it makes sense that it's obviously a positive if you can win through One Ring protection. So that's a great capability for your deck to have, but it's not something I'm going to put something into my deck specifically for, because it has actively never come up for me when that could hypothetically matter.
Okay.
And if it happens one time, who cares?
Also, say you're not in time, you have your whole deck in your hand. You have a million fun ones. Go ahead, try me. I'll pass.
What I would tell people,
them, and then 1v1 me and you with my deck in my hand. Cast this Seagate or whatever, or sculpt my perfect 7. I don't think there's any way you're losing.
Oh no, I don't care about that. What I do, so I've been in tournament games with Nadu where people have One Ring protection and they say, how do you win? I remember I was actually in one tournament game, I think it was at Snowy Summit, where when I went for the win on my turn, 2 players had One Ring protection. And so I did the finale or Cephalou loop to take out the one player that didn't, and then they said, okay, how are you going to stop us? And I explained my board state where I had emergence zone and everything, and I said, on each of your upkeeps, I'm going to mill you out. Because we weren't at time. And so I was like, I can do this entire loop at instant speed on each of your upkeeps. Do you care? Do you want me to play this out? And they were like, no, you're good.
Okay, so the 0.01% that you are in time, it doesn't work. And you're okay with that. It has not affected you at all.
It has never mattered. And so I don't care. Same thing. Like my Kinnan deck has also 0 ways to win through One Ring protection at time in a tournament. It's not possible. And, it has come up for me 0 times. I don't care.
Okay. All right, well, as the casual CDH player getting in a big tournament, that was my biggest, because a lot of players will just put that bullet and put the Thoracle in, but it's like, guys, cards are trash. Don't do that. You don't need to do that. And I'm glad you set the record straight.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at Thoracopoulos to all these things, and they're very clean win conditions, right? And that's appealing because you don't have to explain things. You can just say I win the game. But I have this in the Kinnan Primer as well, where I explain why I don't play Thoracle there, and it's you don't want your cards to be dead. I'm very big on not playing dead cards, and so it doesn't matter. It does not matter how many steps it takes for you to win the game or how complicated it is for you to win the game. All that matters is that it wins. And so if I'm able to optimize my card quality and play as few dead cards as possible, that's my goal. Because cool, I'll explain to you this 1,000-step loop for how I'm going to win the game because it wins the game. And would it have been easier to just say I play Walking Ballista and I win, or I play Thoracle and I win? Yes, that is an easier explained win condition. But it is lowering the card quality of my deck to play those cards, and I'm not willing to do that.
Okay, but I mean, you say that, and Nadu. If we were the NBC list, I think you have 50 cards that are not played in any other deck besides Nadu. So what you're saying is my card quality, looking at the format, isn't that good, but the synergy of Nadu just out defeats that, right? Like nobody's playing Scoots
Nadu
Storm
doesn't have.
against Nadu.
Yeah, so Nadu has more quote unquote bad cards than I normally play.
Right.
But I've made sure that the ones that I have good purpose at a minimum.
Okay,
So
that
like
makes
I
sense.
think the best example of like quote unquote dead cards without Nadu are Sylvan Paradise and Sea King's Blessing. Those cards without Nadu are like as dead as you could possibly get. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'm just reading him. Change the color of one or more target creature to blue until in a turn you choose which and how many creatures are affected. Cost of tap maintain. Use special ability target creature remains entirely unchanged. Okay, so blah 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 blah.
It targets much shit.
Yep, all your
But
stuff
that's it.
you can target instant speed.
Without Nadu, they do almost nothing, right?
Yeah.
But still, in the format that I'm playing these cards, and they are the definition of like the worst cards in the deck without Nadu. But at a minimum, hilariously, they dunk on Cedh when they activate Cedh because you can make everything the same color. But then also, at their absolute worst, they are blue and green cards that I can pitch to Chrome Mox, Endurance, Force of Vigor, Misdirection, Force of Will, Force of Negation. At their worst.
Okay,
They're just like easy
you're
free
okay
pitch
with
cards.
that. They probably win you more games than they lose you games, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. They are so busted. Like a good example of Sylvan Paradise was a game at Snowy Summit. It drew me 39 cards in a turn.
Oh my god.
I had a bunch of tokens on board and shit, and I had no Nadu enablement, and so I just cast a Sylvan Paradise, drew 12 cards, 6 of those were lands, which made more tokens, and then I played an Eternal Witness, got back Sylvan Paradise, and drew 27 more. And then I won the game. like they are they're really really good at Nadu. But that's the thing is like Nadu definitely has overall some lower card quality in terms of like you're on a Pheto Alchemist and Seeker of Skybreak, and without Nadu, those aren't very good. But even in my list, okay, there's still board wipes with Legolas's Quick Reflexes. They can still untap my Mana Dorks to make more mana, or untap my Mana Rocks to make more mana. Springheart, Nentuko, and Scoot Swarm, they're dead token creators. Well, I'm still a deck that plays Gaia's Cradle and stuff. They have little bits of inherent synergy.
Okay.
But they're not great cards without Nadu for sure.
So what you're saying
Nadu,
go ahead.
Well, I was my normal package of cards that are like commander centric. I think Ob Nixilis is a really good example. I've got like 8 or 9 cards that are really Ob cards that are truly suboptimal without it. Nadu as a deck, I've gone up to about like I think it's like 12-ish that are really bad cards without Nadu. But at a minimum, all of those cards still do something in a lot of situations. And what's really important is compared to a deck like Ob Nixilis, Nadu is significantly better at just playing control because my interaction package is so deep. So I'm totally fine to sit back and not be on the Nadu plan for a long time and just hang out.
Okay.
And then eventually I'm set up with Nadu value pieces already when I do play them.
Mm-hmm. Have you tried the other version? Because I'm comparing yours to a couple other lists that are kind of opposite of you, where they're more Carcassima. Have you played that other one? Do you personally think this is better because you're on this, or this is just what you know that's your play style?
So I have not played the Landfall Storm version. I've played against it, right? And I've played against it a bunch. And what I've noticed in playing against it is it's so easy to point a finger at. And that was kind of my whole philosophy when I built my first Nadu list, which like I made a quick version of it right when it came out, and then I updated it before I was actually going to take it to my first tournament with it. And what I was seeing and hearing and playing against was everyone on these like really turbo proactive focused Nadu lists where everyone just gets to point a finger at you and say you're the problem and blow you out. And in my brain, I was like, okay, everyone's really worried about Nadu. Everyone's super on edge for it. Everyone is mulliganing for interaction for it. I don't want to give them something to point at. And so my philosophy with the like control mid-rangey version of the deck is just play slow, play control, hang out, right? What's going to happen when your opponents have all this interaction and you don't give them anything to point it at? What happens from that slower play pattern is they're going to end up pointing it at each other. And you just get to sit back and not do much for a while and, slowly develop your board in a not scary way. And then once enough interaction has been used and once you've developed to the place that you can go off a little more rapidly, cool, I'll play Nadu on turn 4. I'll play Nadu on turn 5. And at that point, usually, people don't have an answer for it. Or I can protect it. And so that play pattern with Nadu, being a lot more mid-rangey, playing control, has done really well, especially in this like heavily more proactive meta of I'm not letting other people get away with their wins early, and then my wins tend to be a little bit more dominant late. So it's been really, really good.
You're in 28 instants.
On about 30 total pieces of interaction in the deck.
Yeah, and then I noticed you're on the Umber Mantle. I think everybody's getting on that third one.
Definitely. Umbral
It's
Mantle's fantastic. I mean, yeah, I mean it wins the game, right? Like those though the Umbral Mantle, Lightning Greaves, and Shuko are so powerful in this deck.
Yeah, I knew Greaves and Hugo for sure. What about copy artifact? Is that someone else's mirror match or something?
No. So that actually stemmed from a conversation really late one night with Temujin, who's also an Nadu pilot and a friend of mine. And I swapped Arcane Signet for it because I was already considering cutting Arcane Signet because I have so many land drops in this deck. I don't really need the mana rocks that much. And that's why you
Okay.
notice my mana rock package is really low.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I was like, okay, copy artifact, like cool. Its floor is Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Arcane Signet, and then its ceiling is One Ring and stuff. But also in my deck that's loaded with interaction and a lot of it is pitch spells, copy artifact's a fucking blue card.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, so that's your
So
Arcane.
it's an arcane signet that I can pitch to misdirection. You know, like
Mm-hmm. Okay, and in your deck, oh, I guess I'll do my own Soul Ring. Darn. I guess it
yeah.
could come up as, hey, I'll copy my Shuko just in case someone removes it, and next turn I definitely win. Would that come up?
It could. I've had the
Shukos?
option to do that. I've had the option to do that before, and I haven't. I've definitely made it a One Ring a few times. I've never copied someone else's Shuko or something. But I mean, there's been plenty of games that on turn 2 I play it as a Soul Ring. You know, that's happened a bunch of times.
All right, so you definitely think, after talking about, I appreciate talking about this. So you really think this isn't just hey, it's a really good deck right now. Everything's cool. Everybody's horny for the new bird. No, this is here to stay. We're probably going to be talking about this for the next year or so.
Absolutely. I think Nandu's a very, very real deck. Right now, if you had to ask me, I think that, which also how you rank CDH decks, everyone's going to have their own philosophy for it, right? I'm a very big believer in what is a deck's maximum capability. So like the best player on the deck, how would you rank the decks? Like what is its true top tier performance? And I think right now the top 4 in whichever way you want to order it is Blue Farm, Nadu, Sisay, and Roxai. Like those are the top 4 decks in the format.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with you, but we can say, okay, you on Kinnan, right? Or this guy on Blue Farm, like Kinnan's still there. I don't think Kinnan is far behind Nadu by
No,
any.
I think Kinnan is like 5 or 6 in my list if I was to make it that way. Again, because I'm imagining the decks piloted optimally. And what you have to consider with CDH decks in this ranking is, you know, if you're giving, these are going to be arbitrary numbers, so don't read too far into them, right? But let's say we're looking at every single deck on a scale of 1 to 10 and it's optimized power level. You know, where we're saying Blue Farm's, you know, ceiling is a 10, Nadu's ceiling is a 10, Sisay's ceiling is a 9.8, you know, Rogsai's ceiling is a 9.6, you know, something like that. And then you could say, okay, Kinnan's ceiling is a 9.3 or whatever you want to call it. These are arbitrary numbers.
Okay.
And then let's say there's a deck like Rocco. And you could say, okay, Rocco's absolute ceiling is an 8.4. You know, whatever arbitrary number you want to give it, where it's still a very powerful, totally viable deck, but obviously it is at a mastery level below the other ones. And the question you have to ask yourself when you're looking at these matchups, it's not always which deck is better, but it's who has a higher number of mastery when combining like the player and the deck. So if you're saying that Kinnan is a 9.3 and I'm a 9.3 on Kinnan because I've mastered Kinnan, and Blue Farm is a 10 and it's mastery, but I'm playing against someone who only plays Blue Farm at an 8.5, I'm favored in that matchup.
Right, yeah.
You know?
But what I'm saying,
versus
I think Kinnan's a 10 under your hands. So I think that's why you can't really read the stats on Kinnan. It's because it's still the second or third most popular deck to tournaments. But of those, who's really bringing them? So I guess in a vacuum, you're right. Like Kinnan probably is 5 or 6, but I would put my money on you and Ian on Kinnan in any tournament. It doesn't matter now, 6 months from now, 6 months ago. Like I think Kinnan is just insane, and I don't see him going anywhere. Just my opinion.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate the confidence, and I like again, as I said, I would feel totally comfortable bringing Kinnan to a tournament, right? Like before if you look at my, Cowtown wasn't a good performance on Kinnan, but my major event before Cowtown was SGCon Vegas, where I mean everyone was there. We had Ori, we had Cedh, we had Zane, we had the whole Rogsai Cabal crew, which everyone says is a terrible matchup for Kinnan. And did I get dunked on by Rogsai in the finals, losing to Ori on turn one? Yes, they got me on turn one. I can't prepare for that every time.
That's an anomaly, though.
But like my point is, I played against Rogsai. I still played against Rogsai more than half the rounds of that tournament, and I came in second place. Like, I still feel totally fine on Kinnan. It's a great deck.
All right, yeah, we can agree there for sure. That never happened. Turn one on the play. Oh, I don't know. Was he on the play?
No, I was on the play. So yeah.
Okay, I got you. But turn one in this big top four in this big Vegas tournament, you just got to take it up to, all right, you got me. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I did nothing wrong this whole tournament, and you just got it turn one.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a turn one, you have a turn one. I'm not gonna. Well, also, it was a really tough mulligan decision for me on that one because, again, I was on the play, and my matchup was Rogsai in second seat, Rogsai in third seat, where it was Cedh in second seat, Ori in third seat, so two top tier Rogsai pilots in second and third, into Freedom Waffle on Blue Farm in fourth seat. And so that's the matchup I'm looking at, where me mulliganing for a piece of free interaction to stop someone, I don't think it's a play pattern that I ever win that game. Especially because I know that Waffle plays Blue Farm relatively proactively, and he will like window just shoot it. And so my first 7 mulligan there, I'm looking at if I draw a land in my first 3 turns, I have protected turn 3 win on the play.
Oh.
And I was like,
you don't mulligan that.
I'm not,
especially on the play.
Yeah, I'm not. There's no world I don't keep that there. I was like, okay, like there's no reasonable way to mulligan for like quick Mango Horn Trinisphere here because Kinnan lacks the tutor package, so you have to be very flexible with your mulligans of like what's realistic. So it's not like I could like mulligan for an Imperial Seal to have a turn 2 Rhystic Study. Like that's not an option in the deck.
Right.
You can hope to mull for Rhystic Study and Fish, but that's not always going to work. And so yeah, I mean, I saw a hand that was protected turn 3 win on the play, going against double Rogsai Blue Farm, and I lost on turn 1. And it was frustrating, but I'll accept that.
Yeah, you can hang your hat on. Hey, like I think you said, I thought I heard a podcast you saying this before. Like I felt good. I was doing this. I was on the play in the top 4. You can go home saying, I just lost the tournament Rogsai. I did nothing wrong, and I think that's okay. I'd rather lose to that than damn, I punted. Like then you're banging your head against the table. Like I think. It is what it is at that point.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to like not have a lot of punts in tournaments at this point because those do eat me up. I lost. Well, didn't lose a game. We ID'd a game at Fishbowl a few weeks later because I cast an uncounterable Dosin with Cavern of Souls, which led to like a 10-minute political conversation with my opponents of how to best stop it. And after like so specifically tapping this Cavern for Dosin, after just over 10 minutes of conversation, when a guy was like, fuck it, we're going to start here, strict Serenade on Dosin, I just didn't fight it. And I let it get countered and totally forgot that it was uncounterable.
Oh, no. Oh,
yeah.
So that a call? Is that a...
No. So that was... So it should... I mean, obviously, that would have been what happened if we remembered it, but we didn't realize it until after the game. Like, I was sitting down 15 minutes after the game had ended, and it hit me that my Dosin was uncounterable, and I went and talked to the guys about it, and they were like... One of the other people, his name is Dixie Normus online, Louise, he also... Like, he said his friend came up to him after the game and said, "Hey man, wasn't that Dosin uncounterable?" Which fun fact here, I've been preaching this since this happened to anyone who's listening. That is the type of thing that you can ask us to stop the game and call a judge over. So if you are a spectator, if you see someone miss a trigger, that is not something that you should ever involve yourself in. Do not have any impact on the game. Like that is a missed trigger. That is totally fine. What is an exception where you can say something as a spectator, not to the table, but to ask us to stop the game and call a judge over, talk to the judge, is when there is something that is illegal within the game state, right? So a missed trigger is not illegal within the game state, but what is important is like my Dosin was declared uncounterable and then it was countered. That's not something that could have legally happened within the rules of the game. So
Okay.
that's the type of scenario where you can say, hey guys, can you hold on a second? I'm just going to call a judge over. Call a judge over, explain to the judge on the side, out of our earshot, what happened. And then the judge will come over and say, hey, this was brought to my attention. The strict serenade happened on Dosen a second ago. And we would say yes. And he would say, okay, was the Cavern of Souls directly declared as like tapping green for Dosen here? And I would have said yes. And he would have said, okay, so that couldn't have happened. So then let's see where we're at. We can walk that back. That's how that should have been handled. And I would have obviously very much appreciated if the person had done that. But that's a little info for people. Never have an effect on game for like a mistrigger or just something that's like someone playing something wrong. But anything that is truly illegal in the rules of the game, you are able to do something.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. Okay. It looks like we're running out of time, but I would just like to ask you, again, a lot of my friends were getting into tournaments. We're trying to grind. We're doing the big CCS November. Can't wait to see you. Have you signed my Kinnan or something? Or no, you signed my Thrastos before. I want you to sign my Kinnan. But is there any pieces of advice you can give people like us getting into those? And maybe like, I don't think I think my brother top 16 Salt Fest, but I don't really know anybody that's like top 4. Is there any advice you can give us newer CDH players on getting over the hump and just preparing for a tournament?
A little hard to like put it in short. I would say a big thing is to like stay calm, have fun, right? Like I play my best Magic when I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Like don't be overly stressed out. If you feel yourself getting stressed out, take a couple deep breaths, do whatever you got to do to just like calm yourself down. Remember, it's just a game. Playing your tournament games, like not too seriously, just keeping it like how you always play feels more comfortable, feels more memorable. It's the same idea as if you practice the way you play, right? That's always going to lead to a lot of consistency. And then with your friend groups and when you're just playing casually and practicing and like getting ready for these events, like don't be afraid to fuck up. And it's never wrong to fuck up and punt and make a mistake. The only disservice that you can do yourself is not learning from those mistakes.
Okay. Yeah.
The reason that players like myself and Waffle and Ian and Jorman and like all these really amazing players don't make a lot of mistakes anymore is because we've made them all. It's not that we just naturally never made mistakes. It's that we made mistakes and we learned from them.
Mm-hmm. Like you said about the Dosen thing, like that happens to the best players in the world. That's going to happen. And you've been there, done.
And that will never happen again.
Exactly. Yeah. If I got to write down Cavern of Souls, okay, let's talk about it. Okay, man, I appreciate your time, dude. Like I said, I think you're the best players in the world. Your stats, like I said, 92% conversion rate, 54% win rate. They speak for themselves, dude. You're probably one of the best Kinnan and Nadu pilots on the planet. Is there anything you wanted to plug before we got out of here?
I'll just say, my name is Max Sternberg, also known as WoundedSatellite. I'm the host of the YouTube channel Colors Are a Crutch, and I also offer CDH coaching. So if you're looking to get better and want to talk to someone like me about it, feel free to hit me up on Discord or Twitter, both on WoundedSatellite.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll have all your links down below, and I'll probably put this up 2 weeks ago. I do want to get in your Discord. I'd love to talk about Kinnan a little more in Discord with everybody else, and then maybe post this podcast there. But dude, I appreciate your time. You're awesome. That is our time. Y'all have a good day. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.